Hello, I'm Colin Gallagher, CEO at Onward and Upward, and you're listening to the Association 100 podcast, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started. Welcome back to the A100 podcast. I'm your host, Colin Gallagher, and we've got a great conversation lined up for you today. Dr. Melissa Pergola, CEO and Executive Director of the American Society of Radiologic Technologists and CEO of the ASRT Foundation, is joining us. She took on the role of CEO and Executive Director back in August of 2022 after previously serving as ASRT's Associate Executive Director, where she oversaw the Society's governance, government relations, professional practice, and meetings and conferences functions. And now in her current role, she oversees a staff of more than 100 employees and plays a key role in establishing the strategic vision and short and long-term goals for the Society. Dr. Pergola is a registered radiologic technologist with an extensive career in clinical practice, radiologic science education, hospital operations, and leadership roles. She also has more than 25 years of experience as a volunteer for the ASRT North Carolina Society of Radiologic Technologists and various other organizations as well. So she truly understands both the association side and the member side of the business. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us on the A100 today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this discussion.
Me too. This is such a treat to have someone who was in the profession too before taking on this association leadership role today. So I'm really excited to dive in. And I'd love first, for our listeners who aren't familiar with ASRT, for you to tell us more about your members and your mission.
Yeah, sure. ASRT, as you said, the American Society of Radiologic Technologists, is actually the world's oldest and the world's largest medical imaging and radiation therapy professional association. So we have nearly 157,000 members, and we were established in 1920. So we have 104 years of legacy. Our mission is to advance and elevate the medical imaging and radiation therapy profession and to enhance the quality and safety of patient care. So everything that we do focuses on that.
I love that. And wow, what a long, rich history. So cool. How do you balance maintaining a legacy while also pushing towards the future and thinking about innovation and advancements?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think when you have an organization that has such a rich history, you have to continually focus on what made it so successful. And I would say there are a few things. One is that we always consider mission in all of our decisions. And that has happened throughout the history of the ASRT. And I truly believe that when you're making decisions, whether it's for new programs or stopping, starting, or continuing programs, or how we might need to push the envelope with the industry, we're always considering our mission. I would say the second thing that we've always done at ASRT, and again, this is honoring legacy, but also pushing us forward, is making sure that we remain member-centric. And so I think about it, there are different leaders at different times in history, and sometimes there's a different type of leadership that needs to be there because there are different challenges for members. There are different challenges in the world and in industry. And so I think as long as we continue to have the pulse of our two things, I would say our members and their needs and wants, and that also we have foresight and we're paying attention to what is happening currently and what we expect might happen in the industry, in our profession, and we are being proactive, then I think that's the only way that we can honor legacy and continue to innovate.
I love hearing you say mission and member-centric focus. We hear that time and again, but it's not as easy as it sounds. And the associations that I see truly succeeding, that's their laser focus. And you guys are showing it. This long of an organization with so much success, it pays off to keep that focus there.
Yes.
So you also place a really high value on leadership, on creativity, and accountability. And I think these are incredibly important values. How do you foster them, both within your team, but also among your greater membership too?
Yeah, what a great question. So for me as a leader, it's extremely important that I enable my employees from the front line through the senior team. And so what that means is that they all have the tools, the knowledge, and the skills that they need to be successful. I actually look at my role as being an obstacle remover. I love that requires me listening to what they need and making sure that I can remove those obstacles, whether that is being innovative and changing things and saying yes to things that maybe they would have thought I would have said no to promote this innovative culture, or simply just having a listening tour, which I do every year, where I meet with every employee. And this year, for instance, the question was just, what matters to you? And then taking that feedback and figuring out, how do we use what our employees are saying, not only to create a good ASRT culture, but to continue to change the way we present ourselves to our members. And so first, it's modeling the way and creating a culture. What I would say about that culture, because you talk about creativity and accountability, and what we find is that inherently as humans, we're afraid to fail. And so another thing that's extremely important to me as a leader, and something that I say often to my employees, is if we're not failing, we are not trying great things. And it's not easy because, like I said, inherently we're fearful. So I have to continue to live that. And all of ASRT employees have to continue to live that. So we have to try new things, and then we have to raise our hand and say, you know what, that didn't work. And that's okay. Now let's look at what didn't work, and let's do what I call a postmortem, figure out what were the processes that could be changed. What did we learn? And let's get up and let's try something else new so that we can continue to innovate and become great. But you have to live that as a leader. You also have to raise your hand and say, oh, that didn't go too well. I messed that up. Here's exactly what I did, which actually something happened to me right after I started at ASRT. The office needed to close because of weather. And it was a little bit late, so some of our employees would have already been on the way. And I decided to pull the trigger and close the office. It didn't feel good to a lot of employees because they didn't find out early enough. But as a leader, I had to make sure everyone was safe. And so I apologized. It became a very big thing. But I also realized that the processes that we had in place to notify our employees maybe weren't best in class. When we changed, we created a whole new policy procedure. We even bought a new tool to more effectively communicate with our employees. So again, it's about creating a safe environment and then continuing to speak that narrative so the employees trust you.
That's an incredible example, and it shows you're willing to walk that walk, because you do hear a lot of leaders who, oh, it's okay to fail, but then when someone does, it's not okay. So that's just, I love that you set that example, and that's really creating the culture, and that's where it starts.
Yeah. And you also asked me about members. So we have senior staff members who manage our volunteers and committees, and they also model the way of understanding the responsibility as leaders and providing our volunteers tools. And we have lots of programs for our volunteers too. So we have development programs. We have our ASRT leadership development program. We have an educator institute. We have a student to leadership development academy. And we also just make sure that we provide our volunteers with not only all the tools they need, but all of the communication and education that they need to be successful.
That's amazing. I love it, just going top down all the way through the organization. That's great. And a lot of times with associations, I do think there's the mentality of, let's just do what we know work. Let's just keep doing it. This is how we've always done it. So creating that no fear of failure, that lets you do exciting things.
Yeah, and it's important, right? Because if we look at history and we look at some of the big companies that were leaders in their field that no longer exist, if we are not continuing to pay attention to what's happening around us, we will become extinct. And it's scary because change is scary. But it's important that we have to continually be looking at, how do we adapt to the environment and the changing times?
Yes, for sure. So shifting gears a little, another huge cornerstone for all associations is advocacy. And you all have been a leader fighting for the reclassification of radiologic technologists as professionals. Tell me more about this effort.
Oh, yes. So such an important effort. So the Office of Management and Budget classifies professions, and we have been classified as technical. And we decided that it is about time that we are recognized as the professionals that we are. It's interesting. One of the requirements for that is that you have to be a profession essentially that critically thinks. And I would just say the general public in general don't really understand who we are. And so if the general public doesn't understand who we are, legislators don't understand who we are. And when we're in the hospital, oftentimes people think we're nurses or we're doctors, and we're not. We're medical imaging and radiation therapy professionals who have this whole scientific body that we have to learn and apply. And I'll give you an example of why this is so critical. So I was also an educator, a hospital administrator. And when I was an educator, you have textbooks that you teach. I'm sure that your listeners have either had x-rays or had family members or friends who've had x-rays. So we think about something as simple as an ankle x-ray. So we're taught how to create the different views that are required so that a doctor can diagnose if there's maybe a fracture or a break. They're really the same thing, but in medical, people think it's a fracture, really a break. But so if someone essentially comes in with crutches, but they're mobile, there's one way to create the imaging. I worked trauma in a level 1 trauma center for years, and we even had patients that came in lifelike from horrific accidents, and we might even have an open fracture. There's a very different way to create images when the patient can't move. And that's just one example of how we have autonomy as professionals to be able to create images that really, without what we do, healthcare would not be the same. And so this is something that I'm sure, as you saw, this is really something that is so important to the core of our profession. In a matter of less than a week, we had over 42,000 letters written to the Office of Management and Budget, petitioning that we become professionals. So yes, it was something that was important. But I think the way that we have sustained advocacy is that we continue to educate our members about the issues in our profession. This was one that everyone felt to their core and everyone understood. There are lots of other issues in our profession, encroachment on our profession. We don't have state licensure in every state. So there are ongoing battles where we have to continue to build grassroots efforts. And it's our responsibility to create that same level of passion and that same level of urgency with all of the issues that we need everyone to step up and really speak out for who we are.
I love to hear both of that, because I think the first thing is literally the pinnacle of every association. That's to raise the level of their profession. That's what their members want. But also to note that there are a lot of advocacy issues that aren't necessarily exciting, but are essential. And to be able to drive enthusiasm, passion, and mobilize around, that's where you succeed in advocacy. And that's where that storytelling comes into play, and just being able to really show what this issue means. That's really cool.
Yeah. And some of the things that we do as an association to make sure that we have advocates who are educated, because that's a body of knowledge too, right? If you're going to go speak to legislators. So we have multiple programs. We have a short 2-part series that's virtual where people can learn to be advocates. We have a 10-week program where it's synchronous and asynchronous, where we teach people to be advocates. And then we have committees that are completely focused on advocacy. We have affiliates. Of course, we're a national organization. And so we also work with our affiliates hand in hand, particularly on state issues. So it's a lot of work, but it's very important work.
Yeah, 100%. I think another major issue we're seeing almost every association we deal with is tackling is workforce shortages. That's it's across the board. So many people are battling that right now. Can you share any of the strategies that you're implementing that have helped address this?
Yeah, so we have a very robust research department, and we track our shortages. And the last 2 surveys, we are at the largest shortages that we've ever seen, at least in the last over 20 years that we've been tracking. So one of the things that we realized is that we have a lot of sister organizations, associations, credentialing bodies, accrediting bodies, who also have this same pain point. And what we did is we hosted a consensus committee and brought together 18 organizations, not just organizations, but also representatives for all of the medical imaging and radiation therapy modalities that we represent, educators. And we met, and from that created a white paper. One of the things that's important to me is that we're all working in the same direction and working together. And so that was the start of it. Once we did that with the white paper, we have now created work groups that are going to work on the suggestions made by the white paper consensus committee to continue to move the dial, right? And in the beginning, you mentioned short-term and long-term goals. A workforce shortage is something that there are things we can do now, but it also has to be a sustained long-term effort. And part of that is also making sure that for us, people know who we are. So one, we did the consensus committee, and we are working on that. Again, action is extremely important to me as a leader. Two, we've embarked upon, for our profession, what we call the Be Seen campaign. And that started last February. And it is about raising the visibility of who we are. And again, we can't impact the shortages if the prospective students don't know who we are. So we are trying something new, and we have a website called asrt.org/beseen to educate. But we also, one of the important aspects of this campaign was we did something new. We created a television commercial. And so that commercial aired on the Olympics with over 25 million views. Yes. And recently we've been airing on NBC Proper and USA Network. And we have had tens of millions of views on that commercial. And it's really about educating about who we are and starting the narrative of this is an amazing profession and an option in healthcare that you might not know about.
That's so cool. I love taking that risk and doing something. What a great scale. The Olympics. That's amazing.
Yes. Yes. I guess I should clarify. It was in the Olympic trials. The Olympics
kind of very important piece of it. It was still 25 million views. And that's amazing. Yes. Yes. I love that. I'm hearing in so many things we're talking about, listening to your members, coming back to your members' focus, what they're thinking about. That's so important, again, for any association. How are you guys able to gather member feedback, act on it, and continually improve? Do you have processes in place? How do you do that?
We do. So, of course, we do member surveys, but we also are very serious about our NPS score, our Net Promoter Score. And as we get the Net Promoter Score, the answers back, we make sure that we try to convert those who are not promoters by addressing their concerns and their needs. Another thing that we did very recently, and you can tell from everything I'm saying that I have an amazingly supportive board who also is creating an environment where I'm not fearful to try new things.
Goes a long way.
That's right. So we recently partnered with an external marketing research company, and we are doing a full-scale market research on what our members want and what they need. So it involved interviews with members, never been members and lapsed members. From that, it created a quantitative survey that we sent out to all professionals in the field. And from that, we have created personas or different sort of buckets of members, what their needs are, what they care about. And we're going to take that feedback and make sure that our programs are meeting the needs of our members, but also that we're speaking to their heart. So through our marketing, we're actually speaking to what matters to our members. So for us, threefold right now: member surveys, Net Promoter Score, and this big initiative of partnering with an external marketing research company.
That's awesome. Looking at the membership itself. So your members, as you talked about, they play a really critical role in patient care. Yeah. When we talk about things that are constantly evolving, and that the healthcare industry is right up there. So how are you helping your members stay equipped to meet these changing demands?
Yeah, so we have lots of things to help our members. Our members are required to do mandatory continuing education. So we want to make sure that we have not only education, but education that is cutting edge and that does prepare them for now and for the future. So we have an online CE library and an ASRT store. And between those two, we have over 1,000 continuing educational products. We also track and transfer their continuing education for them to their credentialing bodies. But we also have ASRT scientific journals. So we have one that is called Radiologic Technology and one specifically for our radiation therapists. We have education symposiums. So at our annual Governance and House of Delegates, we provide education. We have a radiation therapy conference for our therapists. We're at RSNA, which is our big Radiologic Society of North America conference. We're there as a presence with education. We are continually, a couple of things, paying attention to what the current needs are and preparing them for the future, but then making sure that they have those products that they can access, whether it's a scientific journal or an ASRT Live, so that they can continually update their education as lifelong learners.
So there's a lot, as you're saying. That's amazing. What? Wow. You guys are busy. I'm laughing because on our outward and upward side of the business, so we do PR for associations. And one of the things we always say is we help you through earned media become the go-to source for your industry, for your profession, whatever exactly your association's goals are. But it's also a holistic view. So you can't be the go-to source unless you have great research, unless you're doing great advocacy, unless you have great education. And I'm just blown away seeing you guys cover all of these bases. Talk about being the go-to source for your members, for everywhere. So that's really cool. The last thing I really want to dig into a bit too is the foundation side of things. And so we know a lot of associations have a foundation. ASRT Foundation supports philanthropic efforts to advance the profession. How do you align the philanthropic side with the strategic goals of the organization?
Yeah, I'm so proud of our foundation. Our foundation really is the worldwide leader in funding for medical imaging and radiation therapy. And the way the foundation supports ASRT members is it really supports them in achieving their goals through grants and scholarships. And for instance, in 2023, they awarded over $360,000 in scholarships and awarded 90 medical imaging and radiation therapy students with those scholarships. They also do grants. And so they awarded over $117,000 in research grants. And overall, they presented 192 scholarships and grants totaling over $480,000. And as you mentioned, our field is ever changing. Technology continues to change and advance. And the foundation supports is twofold. We've been talking about shortage. So they do provide scholarships to students and really to try to get them involved and help them be the future generation. But I think also it's important to talk about those grants and the fact that they are sponsoring and funding researchers to really put information out about what we're doing now and also looking towards the future of how do we continue to grow as a profession.
Yeah, that's really great. So crystal ball time. Looking at those challenges and opportunities, we all always have our SWOT analyses. What are the biggest challenge, biggest opportunity facing ASRT, and how are you prepping the organization to face that?
Yeah, I think I would summarize it in what the heart of what the Be Seen campaign is. And so the Be Seen campaign, again, is to raise the visibility of the profession. And I think here's where I would say that is what we need to continue as our main goal. If we raise the visibility and people understand who we are, then as technology is changing, as healthcare continues to innovate, we will be recognized as someone who needs to be at the table, not someone who these changes are being done to or decisions being made outside of us leading what happens to our profession. By being visible, we can make sure that legislators know who we are so that as legislation comes down the pipeline, people say, hey, you know what? We need to reach out to the ASRT and their members because we can't make decisions that could impact that profession without, again, them being at the table. And by raising the visibility and the respect of the profession, it will also solve the major problem that we talked about, which is the pipeline. And so I think it might seem such a simple answer that we just need to raise the visibility, but by having people understand who we are and the important role that these healthcare heroes play, I think it will help us move into the future and be that leader who doesn't have to ask to be at the table, but people invite us to the table.
I'm a big believer in keep it simple. Simple solutions are often the best ones out there. No need to overcomplicate things. Well, so this has been just incredible. I'm so appreciative of all the great insights, and it's just really cool hearing everything you all are doing. It's very impressive and very cool to learn about. Before we let you go, though, we like to wrap up all of our podcasts with some just for fun questions to get to know you a little bit better. So our first one is very easy. Where'd you grow up?
Oh, so I was actually born on Long Island, so in Islip, and my dad was a Suffolk County police officer, but we moved to North Carolina when I was 9. And I lived in North Carolina most of my life till I had the opportunity to move to Albuquerque, where our corporate offices are. So the big chunk was North Carolina.
Love it. Funny, in Long Island, we actually, one of our staff is in West Islip.
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah. All right. What's your Starbucks order or go-to morning drink routine if you're not a Starbucks fan?
Oh, no, I'm not really a Starbucks fan. I am a coffee drinker, but I am a non-discriminating coffee drinker, so it really doesn't matter. Whatever coffee found in a pot or the pods that happen to be in the house. But I do love the egg white bites from Starbucks.
Oh, yeah, those are good.
Yeah, so I will go through a Starbucks drive-thru to get that. But the coffee, to me, it doesn't matter what it is. I'll drink it if it's been in a pot for 5 days.
I love it. All right. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work?
You know, I wouldn't say I would just work. If I had the opportunity to stay in the position I am in currently, I would continue to work because, as you mentioned, I grew up in this field. I started in X-ray school 4 days out of high school, and my entire career has been focused on this. And the ability to live my purpose at this point in my career, I would continue to do this job. If I didn't have this job, no, I would not work.
Fair enough. I like it. All right. What's the last show you binge watched?
Oh, binge watched. Oh, you know what? So there are 2 things that I watch, and it's either food or murder, like Dateline. And I binge watched, which is odd, but a lot of people might think that. So I binge watched Gordon Ramsay's, is it called Food Star? Gordon Ramsay's Food Star?
It sounds right. It's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a competition.
I like it. Awesome. I have a 3-year-old, so unfortunately, Bluey is about it for me right now.
Are you over Miss Rachel? Because I have a granddaughter, and I'm learning all about Miss Rachel.
We loved Miss Rachel. Occasionally, it still comes back, but yeah, a big fan favorite for a while. All right. Food you can't live without.
Oh, pizza. If I had to have one food forever, because there's so many different things you can do with it, definitely pizza.
I am 100% on board. I could eat pizza every day. I love it. All right. What's your bucket list travel destination?
Oh, I would say, I don't know if I can say this because I've been there, but I've been to Rome, but I would love to go back and spend about a month in Italy and be able to explore all of Italy. I think that's definitely my bucket list trip.
Yes, Italy's like absolutely one of my favorites, and there's so many places I haven't been there that I want to go back and see. So I hear you on that one. Awesome. Melissa, thank you again. This was just wonderful, and I know our listeners will get so much value out of this. So we appreciate you joining us on the A100 today.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
That's a wrap for today's episode. The Association 100 podcast is a production of Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of the A100 newsletter, a bi-monthly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association, or do you have some words of wisdom for the trenches of association life? We want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupward.com. That's info@onwardupward.com. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association inspiration and insights. Thanks for tuning in.